Then Ar-Pharazôn the king turned back to the worship of the dark, and of Melkor the lord thereof, at first in secret, but ere long openly and in the face of his people, and they for the most part followed him. Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we are going to be taking a look at the last king of Númenor, he who finally drove Western Est to its utter ruin, Ar-Pharazôn the Golden. Links to articles and videos which helped with today's video are in the description below. However, before we get into the story, I would like to thank the sponsor and partner for today's video, Mythologie Candles. My friend Leah, the founder and CEO of Mythologie Candles, has a wonderful business where she and her crew make candles inspired by Middle-earth and other fantasies, and these candles are absolutely wonderful. You all know me, I don't take sponsorships unless they are for products that I myself like and or use, and products that relate in some way to this channel and Tolkien's works. A few months back, Mythologie Candles sent me some of their products to test out, and I especially like the candles entitled The Warrior, The Halflings, and, as odd and gross as this title sounds, Cave Troll, which is actually a candle with earthy scents, and I would highly recommend it. Please check out the candles through my link in the description or through the QR code to help support my channel and Mythologie Candles both, and consider getting some wonderful Middle-earth candles from a friend of the channel. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. Born in 3118 of the Second Age, Pharazôn, whose name meant golden in Adunaik, was the son of Gimilchad and nephew of the king Tar-Palantir. Though he never took the name, his Quenya name was Callion, meaning son of light. Pharazôn, like his father and grandfather Ar-Gimilzur and others who came before, had nationalistic tendencies concerning Númenor in its later days, and the island's objectives in Middle-earth. While Pharazôn was, at least in his youth, friends with Amandil, who would be the last lord of Andúnië and a leader of the faithful, Pharazôn quite generally opposed the ideologies of the faithful, their remembrances of tradition in the elven manner and worship of the Valar and of Eru, and Pharazôn's opposition to such things would only grow in strength as he aged and became more radical. For a time in his early life, Pharazôn went to and dwelt in Middle-earth, becoming a captain of the Númenorians at sea and on land. For Númenorians went to war in the coastlands of Middle-earth, attempting to extend their dominion over men in Middle-earth. At this time, Pharazôn was actually a generous person, and shared his wealth and favor with many Númenorians, yet still he was a man of conquest at heart. However, in 3243 of the Second Age, his father Gimilchad would pass away just shy of turning 200, which was quite young for a Númenorian in the line of Elros. Pharazôn returned to Númenor and his people, likely to take up his father's place, for though he nor his father were in line for the kingship, they still held great power and sway, especially in their rebellions against Tar-Palantir and his attempts at a return to elven and older Númenorian tradition. Pharazôn remained in Númenor for some years, until his uncle the king passed away, and the rule of Númenor was handed down to Tar-Palantir's daughter, Tar-Miriel. Pharazôn saw this as an opportunity, as the evil ambitions of his heart manifested and, much against Tar-Miriel's will and the laws of Númenor, Pharazôn married her, his first cousin, usurping the throne from her and taking the name Ar-Pharazôn as king. He changed Tar-Miriel's name away from Quenya, naming her Ar-Zimrafel in Adunaik, likely meaning jewel daughter. Ar-Pharazôn seized the scepter of Númenor in 3255 of the Second Age, and would go on to become the greatest tyrant the world had known since Morgoth in the First Age, but we will get there later, as Ar-Pharazôn's ambitions stopped short of nothing less than becoming the king of all men, quite nearly the king of the world of Middle-earth. Yet still, for a time, he would hold on to some traditions, but the faithful would continue to be subjected, those who looked to Amandil and his son Elendil to make things right, and Amandil and his line still held some political power, even in Ar-Pharazôn's Númenor, at least early on. However, word would come soon to the Númenorian capital of Ar-Menellos from Middle-earth that Sauron's strength was returning, and the Dark Lord was putting forth his power upon the coastal cities, taking the title of King of Men. Sauron was attempting to drive the Númenorians back into the sea and possibly destroy Númenor if he could. Ar-Pharazôn's pride was too great to bear this. He believed that he, the descendant of Elros and Eärendil, should be the king of men, and he hoped to ensure Sauron's servitude. So the king of Númenor commissioned the making of a great hoard of weapons and many ships. Then, in 3261 of the Second Age, Ar-Pharazôn and his mighty and powerful host set sail for Middle-earth, and his coming was an image of power from the mighty men of Númenor, the men at twilight, sails of scarlet and red and gold. Fear came to the people who dwelt upon the coasts, and they fled. The fleet came to Umbar in the south, a haven of the king's men, those who followed Ar-Pharazôn's leadership and ideologies most closely. So mighty was the Númenorian fleet and army that Sauron was unable to oppose them, even as Ar-Pharazôn and his host set up their great pavilion and throne and tent upon a hill. Ar-Pharazôn's heralds came to Sauron demanding the Dark Lord come before Ar-Pharazôn and swear to him fealty. Sauron did this, and did so willingly, as he could not hope to beat the Númenorians in combat, and had a different plan. Taking on a fair form once again, he came and surrendered to Ar-Pharazôn, speaking fair and wise words. Yet the king was not deceived, not yet. Sauron was taken back as a prisoner to Númenor, and he saw Ar-Menelaos, and he was astounded, yet filled also with envy and hate for the men and their great island kingdom. But Sauron did not give up his true disposition, yet continued to speak words against the Valar and Eru, swelling the pride of the Númenorians, and speaking to their prior fears and hatred of such entities. Amandiel was still on the Council of the Scepter for now, once the dear friend of Ar-Pharazôn, but quickly all others on the council bent to Sauron over the decades, and grew against Amandiel. Sauron then began to speak of the ancient darkness, of which Sauron lied and said the world was made from. Ar-Pharazôn began to listen to Sauron behind closed doors, asking about he who is the Lord of the Darkness. And that was the beginning of the end for Ar-Pharazôn and his kingdom of Númenor. Sauron told him thus of Melkor and lied, saying Eru was false, a fake entity created by the Valar to serve their ends. And the king listened, and began to worship Melkor. Ar-Pharazôn, who should never have been king, the heir of the line of Eärendil, was now one of the first Dark Lord's greatest worshippers, and one of Morgoth's greatest victories in the later days of the world. Ar-Pharazôn worshipped privately at first, but he became more public about it over time, and many of his people would join him. Amandiel would be dismissed from the council finally, as Sauron hated him above all others in Númenor. Yet Amandiel still had enough influence to survive Sauron's wrath. Meneltarma, which had seen the worship of Eru by the kings and peoples of the past, was deserted, and the king made it illegal to go upon that mountain, but Sauron also dared not tread there either, as he still feared what was truly real. Amandiel was stricken with sadness as he heard the rumor that Sauron wished for the White Tree of Númenor, Nimloth, to be cut and burned. But still, the king held to this last tradition and protected the tree for a time, as he feared the words of Tar-Palantir, the last king before him, who said that if the White Tree was felled, so too would the line of kings come to its end. Amandiel spoke about the trees of Valinor to his son and grandsons, and Isildur, son of Elendil, went forth to steal a sapling from the White Tree. And indeed, not too late was this done, for soon after Ar-Pharazôn agreed to see the tree felled and burned as a sacrifice to Morgoth in a new temple to the first Dark Lord. Ar-Pharazôn would also allow for human sacrifice to be committed in that temple, under the discretion of Sauron. And so it was that in the early 3300s of the Second Age, Ar-Pharazôn indeed became the greatest tyrant in Middle-earth since Morgoth. But Sauron truly directed his actions from behind his throne, from Númenor's most important and evil prisoner to its most powerful statesman and advisor. The faithful were continuing to be subjected to torments and evils and death, and such evils even spread to the Númenorian colonies in Middle-earth against the middlemen, who were under the wrath of the king's men there. Yet these evils did nothing to prevent Ar-Pharazôn from aging and getting closer to receiving the gift of men, which was death. Sauron then advised Ar-Pharazôn to do the unthinkable, to make war upon the Valar, and to take deathlessness and power from the deathless. For his fear of death, and in his pride as the tyrant he was, he agreed. A massive armament of hundreds or perhaps even thousands of ships was assembled on the western side of Númenor, and Amandiel would leave his people forever to bring warning to the Valar of what was to come, honoring his common ancestor with Ar-Pharazôn, Eärendil, even as Ar-Pharazôn himself did Eärendil dishonor. The Great Armament began its preparations in 3310, and the Valar sent many warnings to the Númenorians. Lightning felled men, and some said this was the West actually striking first, and even a thunderbolt struck the Temple of Melkor. Yet Sauron himself was unharmed, and people saw him like a god because of it. Great eagles as clouds, with lightning beneath their wings, would come, and at last the ground shook, and Meneltarma, the holy mountain, smoked. But Ar-Pharazôn pressed on, despite Manwë's warnings. Finally, the time came in 3319 of the Second Age, when Ar-Pharazôn was 201 years old, older than his father ever had been. Eagles of the Lords of the West came up into the western sky at twilight, and looked as though they were arrayed for battle, with the western sky burning behind them, making them appear as eagles with fire of great anger upon them, which illuminated upon Númenor. But still, Ar-Pharazôn hardened his heart and boarded his ship, Alcarnodos, the castle of the sea, and the mighty armament sailed west, breaking the ban of the Valar at last. Now these men would of course never return, and though the Akallabeth in the Silmarillion speaks of their fate, the tale which is seemingly written by Elendil himself, we cannot be exactly sure what happened to them in the frame narrative at large, and if Tolkien himself was entirely set on their doom, especially with his later thoughts on the Dagor-Dagorath, the final battle. Before we get to that, let me mention what we do know, and we know that the downfall of Númenor thus occurred, and Amandiel's line, through his son Elendil and grandchildren, became the line of the Númenorian kings in Middle-earth, for they were actually an offshooting branch of the line of kings in Númenor. Indeed, just as an offshooting sapling of the White Tree had survived due to Isildur, so too would Isildur's offshooting line of kings survive as well. Sauron would be caught up in the downfall, and his spirit would return to Mordor, losing the ability to take a fair form, yet having accomplished what he set out to do. And Ar-Pharazôn's wife and cousin, Tar-Miriel, would die in the downfall as well. Finally, as for Ar-Pharazôn himself, it is said in the Akallabeth that he and his men came west, going to war against the Deathless to take from them everlasting life. Yet their evil was foolish as well, for even the most powerful men that Middle-earth ever knew paled in comparison to the powers of the West, and that of Eru the One. Ar-Pharazôn encompassed the eastern coasts of Valinor and Tol Eressëa, and Ar-Pharazôn, upon his ship and throne, nearly turned back when he saw the soundless shores and Taniquetil, the holy mountain. Yet he pressed on, and with his men came at last upon the shore, claiming the land of Tuna, the elven land, for his own if none should do battle for it. In that time Manwë, who himself had enough power to destroy the Númenorians, of course, did not, for he was humble under Eru, something the prideful Ar-Pharazôn was not. He did not want to destroy the children of Eru here. He prayed for Ilúvatar to take mastery over the situation, and the Valar laid down their government of Arda for this time. Eru then reshaped the world, causing the downfall of Númenor, and buried the fleet of the Númenorians in an abyss, while the armies of Ar-Pharazôn were buried under fallen hills. The men thus lied imprisoned in the caves of the Forgotten until the last battle and the day of doom for Arda, the Dagor-Dagorath. Perhaps this is metaphorical, and their bodies would be revived upon that day, or perhaps Eru rescinded his gift of mortality for these men, yet not in the way that they had always wanted, for they would be trapped until such a battle, unable to die. Either way, if we accept the notion of the Dagor-Dagorath, Ar-Pharazôn and his men would participate in that battle, perhaps in the name of Morgoth, and they would finally fight against the West after all. Or it is possible that they would repent of their evil in the end, and fight against Melkor, the one whom they had worshipped. But the sins and evils of Ar-Pharazôn against the Valar and Eru indeed earned justice, and the greatest tyrant of men would be the final king of Númenor. The faithful who had survived would not fall down the same dark path, but even they remembered the glory and power of the fleet of Ar-Pharazôn that would have crushed Sauron in Middle-earth. The king's men and those who became Black Númenorians would either remember him as kin or as a useful tool for their master Sauron, following in the same sort of evil he had committed. And so we come to the end of our tale on Ar-Pharazôn the Golden, last king of Númenor. From the tale of Ar-Pharazôn, we see that when we face fear or wounds to our pride, we must remember our honor, kindness, and humility, so that we and others will not suffer the evils of who we could become if we don't remember such things. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed that epic character history. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts on Ar-Pharazôn? Let me know in the comments below. He is certainly a fascinating anti-hero turned antagonist in Middle-earth, and his actions caused some of the greatest strife for men in the world, just as Fëanor did for the elves. Shoutouts to Mythologie Candles once again. Please check them out through the link in the description to help out the channel. Thanks to our Valar tier patrons, Wetzel, Peter Shepard, Jonathan Putnam, Mark Kralick, Blair Scouten, Merton, John Hume, Sam McBee, Matt Sibbach, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, Reese Jenkins, Adam Petrlik, Brandon Glidden, Molly Sullivan, Daniel Burns, Anthony Harmon, Dorwin Gray, Arthur Merlin, and DJ Vaught. Thank you all so much, and thanks to all of our patrons and YouTube members. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. And I'll see you all again next week with a video on the history of Linden, the realm of Gil-galad. You all are the best, my friends. Thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.